Jackie McLaughlin, he was brilliant when he came on. Like he came on for Conor Whelan as a blood sub, and I'd say if they could keep him on at that stage, they would have obviously had to come off and come back on. He was brilliant. He just gave pace, he gave energy. He was just buzzing around, and he created a lot. And he was just a different dynamic, I suppose, and allowed Conor Whelan to come out then onto the half forward line for a while. But I think that'll be one thing we'll probably see next Sunday. I would be shocked if Jack McLaughlin doesn't start. He just gave something different because.
The Maroon White Pod brought to you by CityLink. For bookings, timetables, updates and any other information, head to citylink.ie. Welcome along to the Maroon White Pod. Galway have reacted from the Wexford performance and they've got a result in Corcoran Park against Antrim at the weekend. Before we get into the permutations and the Dublin clash, just coming to you, Carol, because you're obviously up in Corcoran Park at the weekend. What did you make of Galway in their victory against Antrim?
If you'd asked me this at half time, Paul, I would have said disappointing, worrying. But I suppose at the end, then you were just kind of relief, and I think probably that was me standing in the stand, working, and I think most of the Galway fans and probably from the players, like it seemed like in the first 10 minutes, even though Galway started well on the scoreboard, it was just full of tension. And I don't think it's nerves. I think that's kind of an easy way of saying it, but just tension, just things that, passes that usually go to hand were being dropped, passes even, like there were bobbles everywhere, and we just never got into a flow, even though like our application I thought was good. We seemed to be, added aggression level-wise, and then we just fell off. Very similar maybe to the Kilkenny game, the first 20 minutes of that game we played really good hurling. And we just allowed Antrim. I think Antrim got maybe 1-4, 1-5 without reply. And it's hard to put your finger on why, We did go long with a lot of our puckouts first stage. We didn't win them. And, Keelan Malloy and James Monaghan were winning all the breaks. And it's not like they're hugely physical, dynamic players. They were just reading. They were just there in the right place. Their hurling was sharp. And Antrim took over. And to be honest, going in at half time, I think Galway were happy to be in to go towards the dressing room because we were in a bit of a pickle. But then I suppose in the second half, again, we started a bit better. We tweaked a few things. I thought Conor Cooney really did lead the line, even in the first half against when things weren't going well. I thought he played very, very well. And then obviously the sending off changed. But I think one thing I would say is they probably learned a lot and they used the extra man much better in Corcoran Park than they did in Wexford Park. And if that's the only thing we take, I suppose that is a positive. I suppose the other positive would be Jackie McLaughlin. He was brilliant when he came on. He came on for Conor Whelan as a blood sub, and I'd say if they could keep him on at that stage, they would have obviously had to come off and come back on. He was brilliant. He just gave pace, he gave energy. He was just buzzing around, and he created a lot. And he was just a different dynamic, I suppose, and allowed Conor Whelan to come out then onto the half forward line for a while. But I think that'll be one thing we'll probably see next Sunday. I would be shocked if Jack McLaughlin doesn't start. He just gave something different because the long ball into Conor Whelan just wasn't working. It just things were not working for us, and once there wasn't that avenue, we were kind of confused maybe or lacking another idea. But at the same time, look, Galway went up, got the job done, and gave themselves a home game to get into the Leinster final. And if Galway win on Sunday, no one will look back on Antrim or on Wexford games. But I suppose it still leaves you with those questions. And I think even after the league game, I probably saw a bit more of a pattern of what they try to do on Sunday. I don't know, questions, and it's not a lack of application of the pitch. It's not a lack of work rate. It's just, I don't know, it seems to be kind of a fog around the team, and we're playing in patches. And I suppose that can go either way. That can take off next Sunday, hopefully, or it continues and we could be out of the championship.
Did you see any other positive or improvements from the Wexford game?
Well, definitely Jack McLaughlin was a positive. I thought Conor Cooney full forward was a positive. Gavin Leith was getting another goal. Dahi at full back, yeah.
Yeah, he played a 3, did he? Yeah.
He did for the majority. No, he kind of played, I suppose, Antrim played with 2 up front for a lot of the time. So he wasn't your normal full back. He was probably marking, I think he was marking Fred McCurry or Paul Boyd for a while, but he was just solid, And I think at no stage really did Antrim look to threaten for goal, except for the long free that Darragh kind of dropped. Otherwise, we were very comfortable. The goal they got was more of a lapse in concentration, I think, from Finn to Burke. He just kind of slipped going forward. But I think we looked much more comfortable there. And I think it just makes things solid. And I suppose looking forward to Sunday, Sullivan not being there for Dublin, you might see Paul Crummy in there. That might suit Dahi as well. But I think that's a positive. And I think, to be honest, Sean Annan back in midfield, he created the goal for Gavin Lee with a brilliant pass, and he just gives you that bit of bite, that bit of. It's not a workhorse, but it just he gets the ball, he tackles, he does the donkey work, and I suppose that is needed no matter what game we're playing, and we need that against Dublin as well because Dublin have an abrasive midfield partnership, and you need to stop the runners that they have. They have pace, so that's probably the two things: Dahi definitely and Jackie McLaughlin coming on.
Did Ronan Glennon go back to five then with Sean Lamb at midfield?
Yeah, for the first half, yeah, and then I suppose
Okay.
in the second half it was a bit looser, so we were kind of Portmania was the kind of plus one or the spare man, but Antrim had kind of fallen back a small bit, and once Conor Cooney got the penalty, to be honest, we were Galway should have had a few more goals, to be honest, but and as well as that, when Johnny Glynn came on, it was very noticeable that he went to wing forward, not to full forward,
Okay.
and he won one great puck out. I think he laid it off and got a score, and I think that'll probably be something we might see on Sunday as well because I suppose it's just easier for as a target to have him there wing forward. It's probably harder to defend him at wing forward than at full back. And I know this sometimes from the full back line. It is a bit easier just to manhandle Johnny Glynn when he's in full forward a bit rather than in the half forward line. It's you're probably more likely to give away frees there.
Niall,
Like it was interesting what you said there, Cartrook, around Galway's use of the plus one or the sweeper, whatever you want to call it, because it was one thing that was noticeable against Wexford that when they had that plus one, that they looked more lost, and if anything, there was probably more space back in the Galway full back line, and I think it was interesting just looking at the game at the weekend. Dublin up to Saturday had liked to play with Conor Burke as that sweeper and give the opposition a plus one at the back, but on Saturday they didn't really go that way. They fronted up with Kilkenny and had a go, and both Conor and Brian played quite well midfield because of that. So it would be interesting if Dublin were to go back to that plus one, how that might affect the game. I think after the Dublin performance on Saturday, looking at Kilkenny, was quite positive in the sense that they went after the game, and I think their midfield in particular was quite impressive. And if you look at Galway and maybe where they've struggled a bit, maybe has been midfield, and I think if you were me, O'Donoghue now looking at the setup against Galway, you'd really want to attack that potential weakness, shall we call it, on Sunday. So I think that'll be interesting.
was it a bread for you, Carol? Just from being
I
there.
think so. I think so. Yeah, I think McGarry was unlucky because it's just the way Conor was falling down, but he did connect, with his nose, and it was clear in the helmet. No, there wasn't a huge amount of force with it, I would say. And yeah, it was a red card, but I think like there wasn't malicious. There was nothing, there was nothing massively bad about it. He kind of flicked his hurl and it connected with Conor's head as Conor was kind of landing down. So it was a red card. And it had a massive bearing on the game.
Turning point.
Oh, it was because Antrim had really hurled well. Keelan Malloy was outstanding in midfield. James McNaught was outstanding. And they used Conor Bohill, who's big, powerful man. He's usually wing back. Played him in the forwards, and like Fintan Burke himself had a great tussle, and Fintan was winning that tussle, but it only take one slip, and he finished it well. But I suppose the biggest concern I would have for Galway in that game was just when we were under pressure in the first half, we did seem to just go along with puckouts, and we weren't winning anything, And if a team like Antrim get 1-5 in a row, any team gets 1-5 in a row, that's worrying for you. So I do agree with Niall. I think when you're looking at Dublin, Brian Hayes, who has improved massively. It's probably that was a standout game for Dublin at the weekend. He has pace. Massive pace. So it'll be interesting even to see how Galway match up with them. Will they put somebody like Sean Land to close them down? Because I would know Brian from club. Brian is very fast, but he's probably not as powerful and as strong as Sean Land. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic as well. And even things like if Galway go with if they go with Declan McLaughlin, is it Declan McLaughlin, Conor Whelan inside? Does Conor Cooney come back out to the half forward line? So a lot of questions for them. But I suppose, yeah, going back to your original one, yeah, it was a red card. It was sloppy play probably more than anything else.
Does the half and half jersey come out this weekend, Niall?
It certainly doesn't, Paul. No, that'll be well put away. Um, but I'll definitely be down there with intrigue. And as I said, as a friend said to me a long time ago, he said, "Look, you can't win this game and you can't lose this game. So you're just going to smile and cheer for every score and be be polite as you can be." So yeah, but look, I'm looking forward to it. Actually, it's great to have potentially, you potentially two Leinster semi-finals on this weekend. It's been a fantastic Leinster Championship, and people would have said, I suppose we would have all thought before this that Galway, Kilkenny were the standouts, and maybe the gap was was wider, but it seems that the gap has narrowed, and I think it's great for the Leinster Championship as an overall spectacle. All three games this weekend are something to play for, and the great thing we're here talking about the games, and we can't really call it. And I think that in itself shows that particularly for Dublin and Wexford that they're going in the right direction. Have Galway, Kilkenny come back to the pack a bit? Maybe they have. But I think in terms of competitiveness, I think that's it only bodes well for the championship. I think the question I had with Dublin last week was, they'd gone about their business quietly in this Leinster Championship. I suppose they came back from the death against Wexford. They had Carlow and Antrim to play and got over those hurdles. But the real test was always going to be Kilkenny and Galway. And last Saturday, even though they didn't win and they were hugely disappointed not to win that game, I think they did perform. I think they did stand up to what Kilkenny threw at them, and I think that the challenge now for Dublin, as was in my time under Dalo, was about consistency. And can Dublin put another performance like that together against a very formidable Galway team? I know we've talked about them maybe chucking away, but I think Galway at home are always going to be a formidable force. So the challenge for Dublin is really to go down there and perform. And if they want to win that game, they're going to have to perform.
Just there when you mentioned your time, was it a tough decision to go from Galway to Dublin for you?
Yeah, look, definitely it was a tough decision to leave Amelia Kirkwood. I suppose like every club, Paul, you've great people in that club who nurture you, who develop you, and who put time into you. And I was lucky enough to have a couple of great teachers in Clonfert, even in Ryan as in Banner, the school I went to, and then obviously the great club people in Aircourt. And I suppose I went to the time where I got a chance. I got a 3 or 4 month spell with Gerlach Nan, and one January morning there was names called out to come back, and my name wasn't one of them. And it was as simple as that. And you have a decision to make. I went back and played at the club, and I kind of at that stage I'd been a couple of years in Dublin. I've been up and down, and I was kind of getting cranky to be honest. And I felt that maybe I'd always been somebody who kind of I won't say high standards, but definitely always trying to put my best foot forward. And I felt I was slipping a bit with the club and maybe falling into bad habits. And I felt maybe the change was right at the time. But I felt for me to get the best out of myself, maybe cut out to traveling. I felt my chance with Galway had done. Most of them, the guys I played with, like to Damien Hayes, Tony Ogue, Fergal Moore, they'd all kind of developed onto the senior stage. And maybe I kind of felt my chance was over. And was I've been working with Kilmacud Crokes, and I said I'd give it a year or two and see how it works out. I was still, only heading towards my mid-20s, so I could always come back. And to be honest, I got in with Dublin because they had a cornerback injury crisis in the league, and Damien Byrne gave me a call, asked me in for a couple of games, and got a chance to start. Had played no league starts in the championship, and I kind of took off from there. But it took me a while. I certainly wasn't off to a flying start. I remember marking Roy Jacob in Crow Park in a Leinster semi-up final replay, and he just took me to the cleaners. And we played Cork down in Porky Queeve in a qualifier game, and certainly if I hadn't performed that day, was probably a good chance I felt that I wasn't coming back. So, but thankfully did okay, and then Dale came in, and I kind of all took off from there. I kind of got a chance to develop. It was interesting. I kind of I was fit, but I wasn't conditioned, if that makes sense. I was somebody who could run around the sand tracks all even for Lucknan and the guys, but like in terms of like conditioned and to play at that level, that's the bit of miss, and also being exposed to that level of hurling. But I don't know, maybe Dalo saw something in me, left me in for the league. I hadn't a great league, but I just grew and grew and grew and developed. And suddenly, you're kind of after 18 months, I was just a different player, physically, hurling, mentally much better. And yeah, I suppose just, maybe it was a situation where I had an opportunity, and I took it. It wasn't with Galway, but look, it kind of it fell, and yeah, it's funny the way things work out.
I'd say there's some stories from the soundtracks under Sherlock now.
Oh, yeah, some nightmares. I mean, yeah, that was by far, and we've done some tough things with Dublin with Dalo in our time. But my God, that was the worst type of training I've ever done in my life, and I don't know what the rest of the lads think, but I'll never forget that. But look, you could see what he's trying to do, build mental strength and mental resilience. But yeah, maybe there's other ways of doing it. I'm not sure.
So just before we get into Galway Dublin, just the permutations from a Galway perspective this weekend. So Galway need a win, or if they don't win, a draw and a Wexford defeat would also keep them in the championship. If Galway are to exit the championship, a defeat will obviously knock them out, and a draw between Galway and Dublin and a draw between Wexford and Kilkenny would also knock them out. So it's quite simply this weekend, Carrock. A 70-minute performance is what Galway need to produce, and I don't think that has been produced this year.
I just take a win, to be honest, Paul, at this stage. And I think the lads will take a win as well. Games like these, yes, like we love a performance. We love a better performance. But I think if people are walking out of Pure Stadium on Sunday and Galway are going into a Leinster final or still in the championship, at the end of the day, if we perform and lose, that's pointless as well. So I think you're looking for something. And I think maybe a win like that would give them maybe that lift they need, because I think Galway are probably not too far away. Do you know what I mean? We haven't clicked yet. And I suppose maybe, after the defeat to Wexford, we're probably looking for a bounce back. In a way, it's kind of hard to do that in the game we had the weekend. So I think a win is just so vital, because if we lose, that's it. We're out, and we'll be out of the under 20 since last Wednesday. The minors are still in the championship, but they took a heavy defeat to Kilkenny. So it's not a nice place to be if we're out of the championship. But look, if you're this is not the first time we've been in this situation. But I suppose the last time it kind of came down to the four teams, if I remember correctly, Galway probably had the best performance of the championship that year, going down to Nolan Park and beating Kilkenny. And the kind of the mindset was probably different going to Parnell Park that day. Whereas Dublin had to win, Galway probably thought, they were probably in a good place. So it's nearly the role reversal for Galway this week. And I think as well, I think for Dublin, I suppose it is a question of how, and Niall mentioned it, how they bounce back this week. But I think Niall know more about this. But I think the year that they bet Kilkenny in the replay in Portlaoise, I think that was a massive thing mentally, that they hadn't lost their chance and they bounced back and bet Kilkenny in Portlaoise. So this week for Dublin is, do lads feel going into training this week, have they lost the chance? Are they deflated, or will they take confidence and say, okay, actually, we were right in there. Now we just have to go and win this Leinster semi-final. So I think the mentality of both teams is interesting. And I think for Galway, we need to start well. We need to get the crowd behind us. You saw them at Parnell Park last week, obviously a smaller ground, but I would hope that Galway fans come out and support the team, because they need it. And some of these players have given us the best days we've had. So they do deserve people to get behind them. I think that will make a difference. It is in the locker for a lot of these lads. We saw it last year against Tipperary in Limerick, when things were not going well before that game, and even after that, or against Tipperary, even against Limerick in the first 25 minutes, and no one gave us a chance. We played unbelievable hurling, so it is there. But I suppose it will go and need things to just to the jigsaw to come together. I think that's the big thing. So I think to answer your question, we could perform badly again and win, and I take that all day.
What have you made of Galway this year, Niall?
Yeah, it's they've been very, I guess, stop-starty in their performances. They've they've when I look at Galway right now, I've obviously no doubt that Henry and Eamon, the guys, know how they want to play, but it's certainly not translating on the pitch right now, and I think that is a concern. I think I think Carrick mentioned there like that he was back at full back at the weekend. I think that's where he should be. I think that's his best position. I think that would help solidify the team. Um, but that they certainly haven't been outstanding. And when you look at the likes of Conor Whelan, I always look at kind of Galway and kind of say, God, like, they don't make it easy for Conor Whelan at times because he's such a talent. He's so strong. He's obviously his hurling speaks for itself, but like to use him, to give him that advantage, to use him to use the ball better, to get it into him, I think would be, I think would be playing to Galway's strengths. Um, they've tried to at times they've tried to mix up the long and short game, and the short game at times hasn't worked. So I think their use of the ball, would need to be sharper. And simple things like ball going to hand. I think those are kind of the basics that goal we need to, maybe haven't produced right now. So, uh, but certainly having Dahi back at full back would help with the I suppose having a strong foundation, and maybe just creating that space up front where on back to the Wexford game, it was just interesting to see how they lost shape in that game and didn't allow the space up front because look, Galway have good forwards, there's guys here in this team who have an All-Ireland medal and do know how to win. So it's about setting up the team to play to those strengths, and I think if Galway can even start with that, I think obviously they've a real chance at the weekend because when you compare them to Dublin are what is very much in transition, introducing new players, don't have the experience of winning the Ireland, and in those big pressure games, Galway have been there before and have come out on top. So I think that is definitely an advantage.
Are they stuck between long and short?
Yeah, like it looks that way to me. And when you, I suppose, when you look at when I get into a team, you have to look at what you have in front of you. Like, what are our strengths? Um, you know, where can we get the advantage, as opposed to going in with a set philosophy of playing. Because if you don't have those players to match that philosophy, it's just never going to work. So I think what Galway have really good strikers of the ball. Like when Galway won the Ireland in 2017, a lot of those players were on the pitch. They were getting 30 points. They were striking from midfield, the half forward line. They have those types of players. Um, where I feel they might lack at times is a bit of pace, to be quite honest about it. I think, and if you're trying to play a short game and a running game, you need pace and you need guys who can break the line and transition quickly. So when you look at the likes of Wexford, they did that, and they probably built that over Davy Fitzgerald over a number of years, and they've continued that a bit under, certainly when we were there with Darragh Egan and even Keith Rossiter. So I think what Galway have really good ball players, good strikers of the ball, and they have a good inside foot forward line. But sometimes you're trying to play the short game, you need a different type of player. You need runners off the shoulder and you need pace. And I don't know if Galway had that in abundance. So if I was setting up Galway, it would certainly be to play to get scores from out the field because they have those strikers, and also maybe to create space inside to get the ball in. Because when you look at other teams don't have the striking ability to Galway have, maybe just strike from the half back line and get the ball in deep. Galway kind of have some of those players when you look at them, and I think that would be for me kind of where they're strongest at.
Is that something, just when Niall's referencing it there, is that something you've seen in Corcoran and Carrick?
Yeah, like I suppose there were times. I suppose we when it doesn't work, then I know I said talk about getting the ball into Connor. I suppose when it's not working, sometimes we did have chances to actually take shots from long range, and we didn't take them. And I suppose it was nearly a case of then Antrim were able to read what was going on, and a lot of the time, their +1 was dropping back, and just even if Connor won the first possession, he was being tackled from front and back after that. So I do think we have to get into a balance of that. If there's scores on, take them. But I suppose to play that way as well. Cathal Mannion is probably the best striker, one of the best strikers of the ball in Ireland. So if you have him, makes a huge difference. Especially out around the middle. I know he played inside Kilkenny for a while, but I suppose it's just getting the balance right, and that is the thing. You have people like you had obviously Xavier Burke back in the team the last day, you Park Mannion, around that middle eight that we should be able to either strike for a score or let it in. But it just doesn't seem to be happening. No, they did put Joseph Cooney back in the back of the second half, and that did improve as well because he's just such a powerful player, but he also has a strike. So it just depends on I suppose the dynamic, and I suppose that's the thing. We don't really know who's going to be in that middle eight. We don't know who's going to be midfield. We don't know who's going to be 5, 6, 7, 10, 11 or 12. So if those are the players that really you're relying on for whatever way or whatever shape you want to play. So if they're changing all the time, it can be difficult to kind of get that game plan going. So I think what Galway would probably do is try and go back to that first 20 minutes of Kilkenny where we got the balance right, where we were shooting from distance when we had time, but also we were letting it into Wheelo inside, and he was creating space. I think that's why you might get Declan McLaughlin and Connor inside, because you will have two options then inside with pace. And I think that's probably where we need two options inside with pace, and to use the space, hopefully, that'll open up.
Niall, obviously you've been involved with Laois and Wexford at intercounty level, but I've been a bit of like a broken record this year on the podcast, just talking about getting some of this youth into the Galway team to give energy to the team. And obviously there's the question is, are these young lads physically ready for intercounty or not? And it's an argument you're going to have. But I feel like across a lot of intercounty teams this year, managers are just going for that youth to add energy to the teams. Are you surprised that Galway haven't brought more of the younger players through this year?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's a case of when and again we're not privy to decisions Henry and the lads making there, but I suppose they're going to pick well who's performing, and if they're bringing in youth to the squad but they're not putting their hand up, it's very hard then to introduce them into an environment where it's dog eat dog essentially. Now, look, there is a lot to be said. So I put it this way, I suppose when you look at Brian Hayes with Dublin, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, he was playing minor B hurling with Crokes, barely making the minor A team corner forward, and then suddenly, gets onto the senior squad in the club, gets a strength and conditioning program, is kind of molded, and just starts to take off from there. So I think there is a lot to be, and again, I'm sure like development squads in Galway are well on top of this, but it is about identifying players for the future now, and forging a pathway for those players. And I think sometimes we see stars at minor and even at 20, but it's a big step to make the senior grades. So having that pathway for them to develop and develop confidence, develop physically, maybe develop mentally, to become from that environment is something that maybe certainly Dublin try to look at it. Galway, I'm sure, are looking at it, but like you do need a mix of the youth and the experienced. And after Wexford, I suppose I was chatting to a lot of Galway people, and they would have said that maybe those experienced guys are finished. But look, I don't buy into that either, because they're not. There's no one like 35, 36 years of age. There's still yes, they've played a lot of hurling, but there's still a lot of life and experience in those players. So I think you can get something from them, but you do need the next generation coming through. So it's about how Henry and the lads kind of use those players. That Cárthach mentioned Declan McLaughlin from Pertumna, an exciting young player. So I think for him to start the weekend would be important, because that's the environment where you have to put those guys in and give them that experience. I remember I remember in my time with Dublin, like we had people like Liam Rush, David Tracy, 19, 20 years of age, and they were just put in there probably because there was nothing else there, and they were the future. But you also had experience around like Johnny McCaffrey's, Joey Boland's, Stephen Heine. So, like, you probably would like to see a bit, maybe one or two more younger players getting their chance. But at the same time, I suppose Henry and the lads are trying to get that balance as well. You do need that experience and then that youth. So I think like Declan on Sunday getting that experience will stand to him and Galway in the future if he's given that chance.
Is Declan one of the? He's obviously one in the younger brigade, Carroll, but is he one of the only players in the younger brigade you see getting the start?
I think he deserves to start after his performance against Antrim. And that's all you can do. And I think Niall touched on it there. Like it is hard to change players that have been there because they have been so good, and I think that's a natural thing in sport. You know what I mean? Like when players get to a certain age, people start questioning them. You couldn't say that any of those lads have played badly. They just probably haven't. That spark isn't there. And I think that could be yet to happen. But I think going back to your question, I think Declan McLaughlin, he just deserves to start. He made such a difference when he came on that I think I'd be shocked if he doesn't start. No, they might say, well, okay, we need that impact off the bench. That's fair enough. That's a management decision, and I'd understand that. But I think as Niall touched on, to give someone like that the chance when he's after playing well will make a difference. I suppose Donald O'Shea came on, scored two brilliant points from midfield. And again, I think Donald and Brian Hayes could match up. It would be an interesting matchup. Donald would know a lot of the Dublin lads from being in UCD. And Donald gives you a different option in midfield as well. Gives you energy, gives you a massive work rate. And will use the ball well. I suppose maybe the third player that you might see would be the likes of Tyrone Clean. I don't think you see maybe Owen Lawless start in the backs. I suppose at the back it may be a different kettle of fish. The full back is a bit different, but I would think Declan might start.
Who does
Donald
Declan
might start.
start? Who does Declan start instead of?
Well, I think a decision will probably be. I think maybe it depends. I suppose Tom Monaghan or Ivan Niland. That could be a decision. I think Evans
Conor
got I
Cooney
think
go
two,
to 11 then, is it?
maybe, yeah. He took over the freeze. No, Evans scored one or 2 points the last take, but it just wasn't probably in the game. But I suppose they need energy. Tom at 11, I get what he's do. I get what he's doing there, but like he works a lot. He gets on the ball, but he just hasn't been able to get shots off. I think, and I think look, you just need to change something. I suppose. Like Gavin Lee definitely deserves to be playing. I suppose we're talking about young lads not getting chances. Gavin has got a chance, and he's got a goal against Kilkenny, got a goal against Antrim. So it depends. Maybe if Joseph Cooney goes back to the back, is that the spot? Do you keep with the forwards, the other five forwards that you had, and maybe Joseph go back, wing back, especially maybe against Dublin's like air. Danny Sutcliffe is very good in the air, so I think you might see either Fintan Burke going up, marking maybe Danny Sutcliffe, or Joseph Cooney goes back there because you need to stop Danny winning the ball in the air. He is their go-to man. So I suppose it depends. There's a few pieces of jigsaw. Maybe that's it's a symbol of where Galway are this year. We don't really know. It's not. When you even go back to last year, we kind of knew what the team was. One or two
Yeah.
lads coming in and out. Whereas this year, we don't know. But I would be shocked that Declan doesn't start instead of who. I don't know. I know when Evan came off, he had an ice on his thumb, so it could have been an injury as well. And you only have 7 days to recover. So I just think, as Niall said, I think Declan McLaughlin starting. I think it would give energy to the team. It would give energy to the Galway public as well because they would see a guy that came off the bench last year in Nolan Park. He got injured obviously with Fitzgibbon at the start of the year. But I think Dave McLaughlin and maybe Donald O'Shea. That wouldn't surprise me either. He was very effective when he came on, and they, if you look at the management throughout the league, they used him a lot. So I think Donald, both of those would deserve their chance. And I think it would be probably maybe the right balance to have two new players starting, and the rest will be solid enough.
Hmm.
And can you do there in relation to that goal starting 15-9?
So, well, no, I think Carrick has nailed it really. Like, I think it's like 2, 2, 3. new players, I think with the experience, I think you have to be conscious, strike the right balance, and you also have to be conscious of the pressure that's going to be here Sunday. Like it's essentially a do or die game for both teams, and for particularly for a young player coming into a game like this, you want to make sure that they feel as little of that pressure as possible. Maybe in your youth, you don't take that on as much, but like, if this game's close, which maybe, like, I expect it to be close, that in that environment, that you do need your leaders, you do need your Dahys, your Pádraig Mannions, you need those guys, your Joseph Cooney's, your Connor Cooney's, like they've been there before. So I think fitting in two or three guys around that would be important. It'll be interesting to see how, I think for me with Galway, it'll be interesting to see how they, first of all, how they match up, and then what their style of play is going to be like. I think that'll be fascinating to see how are they going to approach Dublin, because what Dublin have, they possibly don't have that star player inside, that Galway have in a Conor Whelan, but they've plenty of pace around the middle of the field. They've guys who can move the ball. They've energy. Like we mentioned Brian Hayes, but you've Conor Burke, who's a good striker from the middle of the field. Like Donald Burke on the last day against Kilkenny, he was on fire against Paddy Deegan. So you give him a chance from 50, 60 yards out, and he'll hurt you. So I think Dublin have those guys that if you let Dublin build a platform, I think they will. The are a threat. Their puck outs on Saturday against Kilkenny was very impressive. They
Was
got a lot of.
Saturday a missed opportunity for Dublin?
It definitely was, Paul. There's no point in saying it wasn't. Definitely was. Dublin had that game, the chances to win the game. They just, I suppose, didn't finish. I won't say didn't finish it off, but I suppose the chances that if they'd taken a goal chance later on, that could have really wrapped it up. And when you need Kilkenny in the game, like that, and they do have quality, like John Donny, I think, popped 6, 7 points, and he was unbelievable Saturday. And at the same time, Chris Crummy had a phenomenal game for Dublin. So, Dublin definitely, I thought, controlled the second half. Their half backline got on top. Chris Crummy, Conor Donoghue, Dara Gray come on, and he's had a few injuries, so it's good to see him back. Carrick mentioned Danny. Danny was phenomenal at wing forward, won like a huge amount of puck outs, contributed to the scoreboard, which was important. And Ronan Hayes as well got a chance inside. I think maybe Ronan on Saturday would be a starter inside. So yeah, it was a missed opportunity. But go back to, I think, Carrick's point earlier, like it's how Dublin deal with that. So I remember in our drawn match against Kilkenny, we were on the bus, and Dale hopped onto the bus and he said, "Our chance is still here." He said, "We have a serious chance now to Sunday. The whole world will tell us our chance is gone, and Kilkenny always win replays." And he said, "Now is the opportunity." So he completely framed that draw as another opportunity, completely reset the mind. On the bus before we left Portlaoise, it was like another war cry, and it worked straight away. We were focused. We said, we've another chance here. And if Dublin have done that, as opposed to look back and say shoulda, coulda, woulda, well, then that's a different mindset. So I've no doubt Micheál said we've a big chance here now to go and get ourselves into a Leinster final or get third place, because they should take confidence from that performance. They should take a huge amount of confidence that when they went, particularly playing without really a +1, I think that was phenomenal to go toe to toe with Kilkenny and to go at them. And I think, against Galway, I think if they take that approach, they'll definitely be in the game, hopefully down the stretch. So it is about a mindset and how Dublin have dealt with that blow on Saturday. If they've looked at this as another opportunity, I think they have a chance. But that's I suppose sometimes that could be an individual choice too. Players react differently to these things, but I suppose Micheál's job is to get them together and to look on the positives.
Paul, just on that as well, I think with Dublin, most of those lads would have thought anyways that this would come down to this game,
Yeah,
So mentally, I think they would have been tuned into the fact that it will come down to the Galway game. So I think that is something that probably would lean on this week as well. And as well as that, they did give Galway plenty of it in the league game in Pure Stadium a couple of weeks ago.
Safe to
And
say that was fiery too.
yeah, and even small things like the 20s winning, you could see, the 20th last day, Liam Rush, I'd say he was nearly ready to try out himself after that win. So that is, as Niall know this as well. Like, Dublin hurling is a very close knit thing, and when people get behind it's huge, and it is an emotional thing for a lot of these players because it's not always easy. It's not always easy being there. So I think they will probably frame it that I was always going to come down to this Galway game. It is a Leinster semi final, and at the end of the day, Dublin will not fear Galway. That's the reality of it. They only have to go back to Croke Park a couple of years ago, and they bet Galway very well, and very comfortably that day. So, I think Dublin's mentality coming down will be very positive, and I think you'll probably get more even travelling supporters from Dublin this year, than you would other years after the performance last week and after getting people back into Parnell Park. So I think Dublin are massive, a hugely dangerous animal coming to Pearse Stadium.
Yeah, I think the support will be important. I think you nailed it there. I think if Dublin bring a travelling support and kind of get a good start, get on top, that will help, because I suppose Dublin supporters, they're crying out for a team to support and a winning team. And again, going back to our time, like winning games, winning big league games, winning championship games, that does draw the support. People begin to travel, and I think that does create energy in itself. That players know that people are behind us, our counties behind us, and I think if hopefully Dublin people do travel down to Salt Hill and give the lads that support, because I think that will definitely add to the occasion.
I was just doing it up before the podcast, the different Galway men that have worked with Dublin hurling teams, and the list is fairly endless when you think of it. Anthony Cunningham, and then you obviously had Matty Kenny coming in then with Craig Kennedy and Gavin Keary, and now you obviously have Micheál Donoghue, Noel Larkin, and Franny Ford.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal. And even when I came in, we'd Declan Coulter playing with Dublin, play with Vincent's as well, and I think Brian Connolly might have got
Yeah.
a league campaign with Dublin too. So yeah, the connection to Dublin and Galway is quite strong. And Matty, when he was there with Dublin, did a great job, because he took over a team that was handed over from Gerard Cunningham. Gerard had started the transition. Matty continued it on with his huge success with Kula. And along, obviously, with Anthony Cunningham had input. I think was Anthony could have been there with Gerard Gilroy. Was it Pat Gilroy?
Yeah.
So the link is strong, and I suppose I don't know what it is. Maybe your Galway lads drawn to the capital, Paul. I'm not sure what it is, but the advantage for Dublin this weekend is that you have three men who's worked closely with Galway over the years and know the Galway players inside out. And I think I've no doubt they'll want to win against Galway as well. So there might be a bit of emotion there, but I think it has been the connection has been strong. So maybe the motorway has helped. I'm not sure.
Three men that definitely do know a lot. Diarmuid O'Dooley can't tug out this weekend given the 20s final, can he?
No, he can't be. Yeah, I think through is it 7 days?
7 days, yeah, I
Seven
think
days,
that's
yeah. So obviously, look, he's another young player, and he's got some time in that squad, and that no doubt would help him. He's definitely one that Dublin see as a future senior star. And he will be a loss, particularly if like Keane O'Sullivan is not available. I think he's somebody that could add to scoring threat on the Dublin squad. But like Dublin have options. I'm going to speak about my own Crokes man here. Like Dara Purcell, for example, is on the bench, and like Dara has been brilliant the last couple of years. Dara came on against Kilkenny, it was last year, and popped 3-4 points.
And pace.
He's like plenty of pace. He's phenomenal pace, and probably one thing that maybe I thought Dublin might do last weekend was throw Dara on with 10-15 minutes to go, because he's one of those guys who can get you scores and who can hurt opposition teams. So I think depending how they use him, he could be an option. I think Carrick mentioned Paul Crumley is probably the likely option in there on Sunday, and he's a different type of player, robust. He's good in the air. He possibly might suit Dahi, so Dublin might need to rethink where to place him. But like, he is a ball winner, and anytime you have a ball winner in your forwards, particularly against Galway, because look, they have physicality, and Dublin did get hurt last week against Kilkenny when they they were transitioning that ball and they tried to play a running game, but when they went to contact against a physical Kenny team, they got turned over. So Dublin will need to avoid that, that Galway half back line. If they're lined up, physically in the half forward line, Dublin will have to be careful of going into contact with Galway.
The big thing, Carrick, for Galway, Dublin are predominantly, they're mixing it, but predominantly it's a run and it's a short game. Like, the big thing here is, can Galway deal with Dublin's pace?
Yeah, I think can they do with pace, but I suppose you got to stop Dublin getting the ball, and they got a lot of the ball from Chris Crumry, from Burke, from Donoghue. Paddy Doyle had a good game. Like, if you allow Chris Crumry to if you put enough ball on Chris Crumry, he's gonna cause you damage from there. That's the thing, Like, Chris is such a athlete, he's such a hurler, and he's so good in every facet of the game. So I think you either have a choice: you can target that Dublin half back line who are so good last Saturday. No, I'd say, is it hard for them to be as good again? And Niall mentioned how John Donnelly scored so much. I think Galway have players that if you allow them time and space, they will get serious amount of scores. But I do think you have to target that line. So you might see, you could see Johnny Glynn coming in if Chris Crummy is dominating the area. You might see Johnny Glynn coming in and marking Chris Crummy. But any time that Dublin have had a massive performance, especially in Parnell, it comes from big catches from Chris Crummy, big catches even the last day from Conor Donoghue, winning a free, fifth pumping, and the energy just flows through the team. And I suppose for Galway, I'd love the opposite to happen, that we see Pádraig Mannion winning a big puck out and winning a free. Things like that change momentum of games. But pace-wise, I think, as I said, I think maybe Sean Lennon might mark Brian Hayes. I think that's Sean's, like, it's his forte. If you think back to the quarterfinal last year, he completely shut down Noel McGrath. And I think Sean Lennon will bring physicality. I know Niall talked about Brian Hayes has improved a lot, but maybe that's the aspect yet that he's probably not, he hasn't maybe dealt with somebody like Sean Lennon who can really, really, mix it with the best. And I suppose it is a different dynamic now. Unless you were watching Brian Hayes playing for Kilmacud or at college level, you mightn't have looked at him because he wasn't that outstanding in the league. He got a couple of good goals, like long bursting runs, but you'd say he kind of in and out of games. So the dynamic now, you're going to be targeted. But I suppose Owen O'Donnell then, like, he probably would pick up Conor Whelan, which is is a battle in itself. And then it depends who Galway have inside. I would love to see Declan McLaughlin if he's on John Bellew or Paddy Smith. I think they're very good defenders, but I think Declan is well able for the likes of them. But if you allow Crummy and Donoghue especially to lay off passes and allow Brian Hayes to come off the shoulder, you're in trouble. So I think the matchups is going to be massive. Dublin have pace. Sean Curry, obviously Keane O'Sullivan is probably out. I would imagine. I can't see him starting. I think Ronan Hayes as well, who was somebody who really came back to form the last day. Niall would know more about this for come across, but he has so much talent, and you can see him sometimes. Just, I suppose he had a lot of injuries as well, but he's so difficult to stop sometimes. But yet he doesn't probably score enough, and even you saw that the last day in Kenny, he could have got more. I think one of the players actually that Dublin have really improved this year, and he's not a new player, is Fergal Whiteley. I think he's playing really, really well. He's a very smart player, uses the ball very well, and I think he dovetails the other lads very well in the forward. So the matchups will go are very, very interesting. Like you probably if you have Paul Crummy starting because Keane O'Sullivan injured, you'd imagine Daithí Burke will be there. Either Joseph Cooney maybe with Danny Sutcliffe. It wouldn't surprise me if Fintan Burke goes out and Danny Sutcliffe. I think if you look back to Fintan's best games for Galway in recent years has been marking those kind of players. You go back to Gareth Hegarty in the semi-final 3 years ago, he was outstanding.
Is he a better wing back than a cornerback, Carrick, do you think?
I think it's just the play. I think it's
player.
Who he's marking. Like I talked about Chris Crummy winning puckouts and winning frees. If Fintan Burke catches the first one over Danny Sutcliffe and wins the free, the whole momentum and the whole psychology, the whole thing is hugely changed. I think Fintan is a player that fans want to get behind, even though he's back. He's just one of those lads. And I think you might see maybe Cian Fahey taking Donald Burke, because Donald likes to get those pockets of space and pull the trigger from anywhere. So I think that might suit Cian Fahey. So I think it's going to be massively interesting matchups. And talk about Micheál Donoghue knowing the Galway team. I think most of the Henry Sheffner will know most of the Dublin team. There's no there's no wild cards really on that team. Sean Curry is a good player, but I don't think I don't think God would fear anyone yet in that team. But I think it's Galway need to look after themselves and use the ball better. If you're allowing the Dublin half back line all the time to win the ball, then you're in trouble. So it'll be really interesting. But like it's a game I'm actually looking forward to, and it's not just because you know I'd have a kind of a I enjoy looking at Dublin. I like seeing Dublin play well. I like seeing them succeed. Um, but I do also like looking at the likes of Owen O'Donnell taking on Conor Whelan. I think that's going to be brilliant. Like, and I think there's a bit of bite to this game. There's always a bit of spice to it. I think Ryan O'Dwyer was talking today. And he was saying, did you like beating Galway? I loved it. I don't know, was that the Prairie in him or the Dublin part in him?
That's definitely the tip in him. I can guarantee that.
But that's what you want. You want rivalries,
Yeah.
and when
Yeah.
Dublin were doing well, I think they had Galway's. They were able for Galway, and I think hopefully Galway might flip it and say, this is our game to win. And I think for both teams, if it's a tough, physical, exciting game, I think winning that kind of game can turn the season altogether because that's the energy that definitely Galway need to bring forward.
Yeah, like I do think if Galway bring that physicality, I think Dublin could struggle with that because Brian Hayes is a fabulous player, but he does need more development. Like Sean Curry, the same way as you mentioned, very good prospect, but a new player in like a new environment for him, so might not be this year. And the one thing that if Dublin are going to really hurt Galway, it'll be about running from deep. Because what Dublin don't have maybe is that real inside threat that Galway do have. So they'll probably rely on scores from out around the middle. They will want Chris Cummy on the ball. I remember, back in 2019 when I was with Laois, Dublin had come off that win against Galway in Parnell Park, and then, coming to Port the first thing we thought about is like who we gonna put on Chris Crummey, and we put on Anna Lyons, size for size, occupied him the whole game. And as Cárthach said, stops those big catches and lifting the Dublin team because I think he is such an influence, and the same with Danny. And I think the matchups will be interesting, but from a Dublin perspective, you'd hope that they're, I guess they bring the confidence from last week and really kind of have a go.
Does Ronan Hayes and Paul Crummy suit Dahi and Finton?
Yeah, possibly. Although, like, Ronan is like Paul is strong in the air. You wouldn't necessarily say that Ronan might catch one or two balls, but he's quite good on the ground. When you look at his chance against Mikey Butler at the weekend to come in low, once he gets the ball in his hand, he's extremely strong. And I think his work on is being clinical in those situations. So I think Ronan likes to really hurl as opposed to mix it physically, even though he's such a big man, and maybe that's the next level of his game where he's comfortable matching with the Dahis and actually going toe to toe. So, but right now you would say like Paul Crummy is probably tailor made for Dahi or Finton. So, it'll be how Dublin kind of what plan will they go with to try and negate that, because what Dublin don't want is Finton and Dahi walking out with ball after ball, because that will just rise the roof in Pearse Stadium, and give Delves boys half a chance. That's what they'll do. So it's what type of game they play. It's what type of ball goes in. I think will be crucial from a Dublin perspective, and who goes in there. I think who goes in there will be also something for Dublin to think about. Will they play with one inside because they have runners? They might do. So yeah, so it's fascinating. It's kind of we had Mystic Meg here like in my helpers lads, but we don't. But look, that's the beauty of it. That's what we want to see. It's better than a foregone conclusion. Maybe in the past where Leinster was kind of dead and buried. So yeah, good weekend.
Just someone we haven't mentioned, Conor Burke. Do you think it's likely where we see Conor Burke versus David Burke?
Yeah, it depends where Connor plays, to be honest. Like, it depends what Dublin do with him. Is he going to sit back in the half back line, or is he going to move forward? Because, like, part of me thinks, do you give Galway the +1 to see how they cope? Because it hasn't gone that well for Galway. and maybe Dublin might try that to stay in the game away from home. Be secure to back, work the ball out. That could be a possibility. But then you can't leave David Burke in the middle of the field, because he'll just spray a ball. He's like a Messi. He's so clever on the ball. His distribution's good. He's striking so good. He'll pick you off. So like you can't leave him at the freedom of the park in Salt Hill, because he'll definitely hurt Dublin in that aspect. So um, they'll probably have to look at maybe Fergal Whiteley going out there as a third midfielder, and because that's Fergal's game. Fergal's busy, as Carrick said. He is a smart player. He's in good form this season, and he does use the ball well at times. So, and he carries the ball well. So if it might be a Crooks duo in the middle of the field, it'll depend on the setup. But certainly from a Dublin perspective, the likes of David Burke will be somebody that Dublin will have to occupy, realistically, because he's such experience, and he's such a leader for that Galway team. So yeah, I think it'll all come down to how Dublin decide to play it, to be honest, Paul.
You mentioned Chris Crummy there, and it just has me thinking to try and negate Chris Crummy's influence, Carol. Would it be a possibility that Galway decide to land Johnny Glynn down on top of him?
On Chris Crummy, yeah, I think you might see that definitely if Johnny Glynn doesn't start. I don't think he will start. I think in the second half you will see that. Now I suppose it depends. If Chris Crummy is in the game, yes, but I think if he's not, they'll probably put him on the other side, either Paddy Doyle or Dara Gray. But Dara Gray, if he starts or comes on, he is good in the air as well, but he wouldn't be as good as Chris. Um, so I think so, and I think again you're looking at you could see it literally on the sideline the last time when Johnny Glynn came forward. You could see Henry Shefflin point to their flag and say, put it on top of Johnny Glynn, and I think that is the place for him. And I think if Johnny Glynn comes on and wins a puck out and wins a free, again momentum. It's more than just the tap over free that he might get from it. But I suppose I don't think he'll start. So I think you need to have something else there. I probably I wouldn't rule out. As I said, Joseph Cooney being up there. I don't know. Will that have depends again? Depends on where they play Joseph. But I don't think you'll see someone like I don't think you'll see someone like Evan Niall in the half forward line, for example, Martin Chris Crummy, or even Gavin Lee, and that side for Galway, as in ideally. No, they could decide to put the likes of Tom Monaghan wing forward and say, right, okay, yeah, Tom is well able to spoil the ball, and then put Chris running. But like Chris has an engine. Like Chris Crummy is a serious athlete. So that is an interesting one for Galway. But I'd say more than likely they'll trying to avoid that side of the pitch because he's just so good in the air. And so that's where Darach's distribution will come in. It was good the last day, even the first tap when we kind of went medium to short. He was very good. Obviously in the second half it was much easier. He went short a lot. But when we were under pressure, he went long, and that's where we kind of found it hard. So, but again, I think even the dynamics of Corcoran Park are different to Pure Stadium. So I think that is different. I don't think you'll see Johnny Glynn start, but I think if Chris Crummy is dominating the game or dominating that side, I think you will see Johnny Glynn probably coming in and targeting and trying to negate Chris Crummy's, I suppose, prowess in the air.
Yeah, like the other side with Dublin is that when against likes of Carlow and even Wexford, like the use of a bit, I suppose, similar to Galway, the use of Owen O'Donnell having him at wing back and then having him at centre forward and even at full forward against Carlow was like was like, very strange to say the least. But considering like he on his days one of the best fullbacks in the country, so and I think maybe what Dublin stumbled upon last week was possibly like their best kind of 15, their best positions. And from a Dublin perspective, you'd hope that's consistent at the weekend. It'll be interesting if what Dublin do with the Galway puckouts. Will they let them have them short, or will they force them long? And then how did Dublin set up for that? Like if you let Galway go along, like he had, and particularly Conor Dunn, who's done quite well at 6, and Chris Crummy. Obviously, Paddy Doyle is a different type of player, so that Galway might look for a mismatch up there. But if Galway do go along and Dublin, even win those breaks, well then that's something that maybe Dublin could build a platform from, because Dublin's definitely seem to go better going mid range as opposed to long. Against Antrim, I think the first 5 or 6 puckouts went long. Antrim won them. Now Antrim weren't good enough to punish, but no doubt Galway will be good enough to punish those puckouts at the weekend.
So, Cárthach, final prediction and the three teams to come out of Leinster.
I think, Paul. I suppose I hope, but I think Galway will. I think we'll see fire. I think we'll see, a real fight and heart to Galway performance on Sunday because we have to. Or backs against the wall. We've been plodding along so far. I think the Wexford game, was poor. Let's face fact. It was poor. We're all disappointed with that, and I'm sure the players were themselves. But I think last week was just get the job done, move on. And I think I would hope that if we get a good start on Sunday, I think we'll see the energy. I think we'll see a similar performance to what we saw against Tipperary last year in the quarterfinal, full of heart, determination, application, and a bit of bite. I think if anyone looks at Tipperary and Cork the last day, only looking at back earlier on, and when I think it was Barrett flicked the ball over in front of him, runs on, and two Tipperary lads kind of let him run past. And the memory I have of that is Pádraig Maher putting Joe Canning on the sideline in Croke Park. I think that's the kind of hunger Galway will bring on Sunday. You have to. I think the likes of Brian Hayes, if he's coming in down to the middle on Sunday, I don't think he'll get the second pass. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the hunger Galway have to bring, because otherwise we're out of the championship and that's it, season's over. But I think the team, I think we'll have, as I said previously, Dick McLaughlin start. I think we'll need energy. It'll be interesting to see, will they start David Burke? Would he be better coming on? And even the energy that brings, and the crowd getting behind him when he comes on, himself and Johnny Glynn, that could be an option as well. But I do think Dublin are coming in with a massive chance as well. And I think, I think both teams, it's such a character for both teams to win this, because not alone, obviously, coming out of Leinster, but just the momentum you get. If Dublin come down to Galway and beat Galway, it's massive. They're in the Leinster final. They'll probably be taking on maybe Kilkenny. And only after losing at them last week. If Galway win, everyone forgets about what happens. We're in the Leinster final, and they're talking about, they lost it last year, and the heartbreak of that. So I think Galway will win. I think Kilkenny will win. So it could come down to scoring difference. At the moment, isn't it, Wexford are ahead.
Yeah,
but I think, but I think if I think Kilkenny will win. I think Kilkenny will beat Wexford at the weekend and could beat them, not comfortably, but I think they might win by 4 or 5. So it will be interesting to scoring difference. But yeah, look, I think I hope Galway win, but I think it's a hope, and that's just from this year. It's just we don't know. It's hard to get a read of what's going on, but I think Galway will have their best performance of the year on Sunday, and that should be enough.
Yeah, the scoring difference isn't actually huge between Wexford and Dublin if that was to happen. Dublin are on 23 and Wexford are on 32, so that's a 9-point difference, which isn't impossible either. I'm probably putting you in a difficult position now, Niall, but who do you see winning, and what three teams do you see coming out of Leinster?
Look, to be honest, I'm probably similar to Cárthach there. I'm going to give Galway a slight advantage purely because they're playing at home, and the home advantage has proven to be an advantage in this championship, and maybe based on history with Dublin probably haven't travelled that well in Pearse Stadium. And but I do think, I wouldn't be one bit surprised if Dublin came out of that game with something. So yeah, like probably Galway by 2 or 3. If I'm gonna have a punt, Paul. But obviously you'll be hoping that you'd hope it's a draw, wouldn't you? A draw in both games. No. And then Wexford, Kilkenny, Wexford have beaten my second year at Wexford with Dara, we went down to Nolan Park and won that game, and then had to win it last year. I just don't see Kilkenny letting Wexford do it 3 years in a row, to be honest. I think Kilkenny probably got out of jail last Saturday. Derek Ling will know that, coming off the Carlow game, coming off the Dublin game, he'd probably expect a bit more from his players, and I think the claws will be sharpened, particularly down Nolan Park. So I'm probably gonna say Galway and Kilkenny. Wexford possibly third, depending on scoring difference. But again, it's just a guess. But yeah, it'll be fascinating.
Yeah, this could really go anyway on Sunday. But that is going Dublin at 2 Imperial Stadium at the live game on RG2 with Kilkenny and Wexford being shown on GA Go. But that's all we do have time for on today's podcast. Thanks a million to Niall and Cara for coming on.